everybody, welcome back to Bayou Time. Harry McCullough here. Yeah, we just had elections. Actually, we're going to have a little more of election on November the 18th. But we did have the regular elections, and they'll have a new government in Baton Rouge starting on January 8th when they swear everybody in for the governor and all the rest of the politicians. One of them is here, Jerome Zeringue. He's District 52, ran unopposed, so it wasn't that big of an election for you, right?
No, it wasn't. Nobody wants the job, really. Don't blame them.
But it is a change. So we're going to have a change in governor for the first time in 8 years.
Yeah.
There'll be some change in the legislature. We got some maps that we'll talk about. That's going on too. But what do you think with January 8th, you said?
January 8th, and it'll be the first time we'll have a Republican governor with a supermajority in both the House and the Senate.
Which is strange, right? I mean,
It's strange.
We've been a bright red state, and we've had a Democratic governor the last two passes.
Yeah, and to have the majority in both houses.
Right.
So there'll be no excuses. If we're going to get it done, now's the time to get things done.
So, real interesting. What do you think of Jeff Landry? You think he's up for the job?
Oh, yeah, he's obviously been involved in politics as AG. He's been in and around Baton Rouge, was in Congress. So he is definitely up and capable, and I think he'll do a good job.
Yeah. So he, at one time, was in Congress.
Yep.
And then that was the district when we went from 8 to 7 or 7 to 6, whatever it was, that
Right.
his seat was the one that was lost. That's when he turned into Attorney General for the last 8 years as well, right?
Well, he ran, and I think that's when he ran against he ran against Bustani and won, and then I think it was then after that he lost, ran again, and then ran for Attorney General.
I got you. I got you. So with that comes a new speaker, Philip DeVilliers out of Eunice. What do you think of the new speaker?
Oh, Philip's a good guy. Served with him for 8 years. We came in together on our first term. He's from Eunice. He has a house leveling raising company, a successful businessman, good Catholic guy. So he's a good guy, real nice, and I think he'll do a good job.
The Cajun Prairie, so out of Eunice. So yeah, still kind of a Cajun, So
Yeah.
still down from South. What do you think that'll affect us as far as the way things are? I guess you don't have people that stay in for 28 years like you used to have, those kind of seniority positions and guys that whip it the whole time. But now it's, I guess the longest you could be in would be what? 12 years, right?
Unless you're like Francis Thompson or John Alario. Well, Francis is now serving in the House. He served in the House originally. I think he started in 1972, I think was his first year in the legislature. Served in the House. That's when they didn't have term limits.
Right.
So I think he served there 12, 15 years, then ran for the Senate. And was there for a while.
51 years.
And then he began. Then they started term limits, and so he was termed out of the Senate, and then ran for the House, and he's been in the House, and he's great. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he is just has a lot of institutional knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you do see in Congress now, and the one in Washington, D.C., seems like people that, well, of course, I say that, and Johnson's hadn't been there that long, and now he's the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, well, in fact, I served with Mike.
Right.
Mike, our first term, he was elected as well, and he was in the House, served 2 years, and then he ran for Congress and won. So yeah, it's great.
Things happen fast,
It does. It's amazing. And again, to the point, in Louisiana with term limits, you can serve 3 terms in the House, 3 terms in the Senate, but you can continue to swap back and forth.
Right, but to have those leadership positions, you can only have so long before you have them.
Right.
So, real interesting. So, what do you think changes? And I think you said it for a second, but first time for a while that we've had governor in both houses, a majority.
Mm-hmm.
So, what direction? Obviously, it's going to veer right a little bit, but what is going to change, and how, will people be upset? Will we all of a sudden have austerity, or what?
Well, whether people will be upset or not, I guess it depends on what side of the fence you're on. I think for the most part, Republican folks and more conservative folks will obviously be pleased. I think, but it also gives us an opportunity. We have and will continue to work across the aisles to get things done. But I think with both a majority in the House and the Senate and the administration within the same party, I think collectively getting things done, for the most part, will be a bit more efficient in terms of getting legislation and advancing legislation. Again, we don't always agree, and there may be changes, and you have to vote and represent your district, and all districts are somewhat different. So it's not, for the most part, going to be just in lockstep, but the point being is that of the same, I guess, philosophy in terms of approach to government or governance, that we should be able to get things through legislatively.
Yeah, I think the headlines will probably end up being social issues, abortion, well, that stops right there, but gun rights, those kind of things are going to be like the headlines. But being able to work together fiscally might be even more for long term. We've always talked about tax reform for a long time.
Yep.
Never been able to do it, or we've jumped back and forth from doing it. I don't, where do you think fiscally will be?
Well, I think, interestingly enough, we tried, I know last session, as appropriations chair, we had proposed the most conservative budget that was ever offered in decades, with growth of government by less than 1%. Unfortunately, went to the Senate and it kind of just died. But I think those types of opportunities to create some more efficiencies within government, we will be able to probably get those through.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see where we go. Another interesting fact is going to be the voting maps, and we have a judge involved, and we'll take a break. We'll talk about that when we come back. More with Jerome Zeringue right here on Bayou Time.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.
Everybody, welcome back to the show. We're speaking with Jerome Zeringue, of course, District 52 here in Houma. Well, you have more than just Houma, but some of the areas are around. Getting ready for the new session, finishing the session, actually. That's where we're going to talk about the new voting maps. I guess the judges come back. Alabama has ruled that theirs was illegal, or they had to have more majority districts, and that's going to roll into Louisiana. And John Bell Edwards had talked about maybe even calling a special session to draw new maps at the end of this year. Where are we at with that?
Well, right now, the Supreme Court ruled that we do have to go back and redraw the maps in support of Judge Dick's original ruling. We did draw maps this past legislative session, but it didn't meet the criteria that was established. So we do have to draw new maps. Judge Dick gave a timeline to January 15th. So the ball right now is in the governor's court, in so much as he can call a special session. If he doesn't, then we, as the new legislature and the new administration, have up until the 15th. We get sworn in on the 8th, as you indicated. That will only give us 7 days to do the maps. Whether or not we can do it, it would be close. It'd be hard. Redistricting is not an easy venture. It's kind of difficult in terms of the machinations and the drawing the maps and populations.
6 or 7?
It's 6 now.
6. Okay.
Yeah. So it would.
2 would have to be 51% black,
black,
not just minority, black.
Yeah. Okay. So the drawing of the maps would take a while, but they're also asking if that time could be extended. So the possibility exists that they would give us a little bit more time. But there's no doubt that the governor has indicated that after we're sworn in, that we will go into special session. If John Bell doesn't call us in, then we will address that. He's also indicated a desire to do a special session on crime. And the new insurance commissioner, Mr. Tim Temple, has indicated he'd like to do something as well on insurance. So it's kind of like our first term. When we went in, we had a $2 billion deficit. And again, you're elected, and theoretically, you're supposed to serve 4 sessions. Well, we served 11 sessions our first year, and it was crazy. Our first term, I'm sorry, that going back into special session, and we had 2 special sessions that first year. And I assume it's going to be somewhat similar with this upcoming term, that there will be a series of special sessions when we first go in.
Well, look, when you start redrawing maps that are going to affect Congress and who actually is in charge of Congress, because it's such a tight race there too, I would imagine the federal government's going to be involved with this too, with this judge and how many, if they make 2 districts and we suddenly have 4 and 2 as opposed to 5 and 1, I'm sure people in Washington are going to notice that, right? And they're going to want it for the next election cycle.
Well, that's, I think their intent is to have it for the next election cycle, but it is the legislators' purview within the state legislature to draw those maps for congressional districts. So it's the legislature who draws them.
That's going to be a big national issue, though.
Well, also the Supreme Court, we haven't redistricted Supreme Court judges' districts. It's been over 20 years. Maybe even longer than that, but I know it's been a while, at least 20 years before we've done that. So that one needs to be addressed too, whether or not we'll do it. There was an interest or discussion. I know Governor-elect Landry had proposed increasing the judgeships to 9. There's currently 7, and to allow for a few more minority districts or justices on the court.
Does that work the same way? It has to be black, not just minority?
Yeah, I think, yes.
Because it's with 30% of the 33% of our state is
Of the
black.
population, what it represents,
Which I just always assumed it was minority, not just one.
But that factors in too as a minority, but it's within the minority of the reflective of the population, and over 30% is black, so it has to reflect that as well.
I see. Yeah. Real interesting stuff, and a lot to work on for sure. You mentioned the crime commission. What is a commission, a New Orleans commission specifically, that Jeff Landry is trying to put together of a lot of local leaders. So what do you think of that? They're going to pay more attention to New Orleans than we have been, seems like, over the last 8 years.
Yeah, well, typically every governor-elect puts together a transition team, and part of this transition team and priority is he's established one for New Orleans. Obviously, New Orleans is important to the state in terms of the revenue generated. We also give a lot back to New Orleans, too. There's no doubt.
But look, they've got to be hurting right now. People are scared to go to New Orleans locally. I know maybe it doesn't have the national, but I know a lot of people here will not go to New Orleans now at night.
Yeah, at night, and it's unfortunate because it's a great city and the food's
awesome.
great. It's a shame we're in that situation.
Yeah, it's like Europe 50 miles from here.
And I think the governor is looking at ways that we can obviously address the issues of crime, the economy, the utilization of the resources that are there in New Orleans. I think there could be a better, we can do a better job because the state provides revenue to New Orleans. They provide in terms of sales tax and other revenue as well. But I think in focusing on priorities or reestablishing priorities for New Orleans, that I think this administration will be interested in working and trying to correct some of those problems. And but obviously there's the mayor and those folks who you're going to have to work with, the council and those people too. But I think if there's ways that we can work and maybe leverage some of the state support to affect some of those things, it would help New Orleans and help the state as well.
Yeah, certainly helping out. Maybe even clean it up like they have in San Francisco for maybe we get Xi to come here.
I was just going to say, we need the Chinese premier to come over here so we can clean up the city. Although they're cleaning up one of the homeless encampments. They have some federal dollars, the one that's right under the overpass by Chapatulas. They're going to clean that one up.
They do it for Super Bowls. We'll see what we can do. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with Jerome Zeringue right here on Bayou.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.
Everybody, welcome back to the show. Harry McCullough here. We're speaking with Jerome Zeringue, House Rep 52. as we're talking about the new section, well, you may have some work to do before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be after the 8th as you start. Let's talk about budget. And you think with the new governor-elect Landry, he may have some new creative ways to attack tax reform and budgeting, right?
Yeah. Well, we still have things to do because our joint budget meets next week, and we have another meeting in December. So there are committee meetings until the end of this term. But there are discussions in terms of was previously been proposed. Obviously, we all know we need to reform the tax structure in Louisiana. We've made some reforms, and we've looked at some things that lowered the overall personal income in terms of percentage and corporate tax. But I think there's been some discussion and a lot of interest in looking at removing or significantly reducing personal income tax. The challenge with that is obviously you have to fill the void that will be created. Now, you have to create the incentives of business or opportunities to backfill that with sales tax. There'll probably be an increase in property tax. Something's going to have to compensate for the loss of that revenue. You're looking at personal income generates close to $4 billion of state revenue.
So you'd have to figure out where it goes. The problem is we got a Sun Belt, right, that we kind of competing with. We got two shining stars, basically, when you talk about Texas and Florida, and both of them have zero personal income tax. Is that where you want to go? So a model like that?
Well, it's I don't think it's where we could go, even if we wanted to. A lot of people like to compare us to Florida and Texas. I mean, if you're looking at their tax base, their population, the infrastructure that is there, I wish we had that in Louisiana. Unfortunately, we don't.
So those taxes didn't create that.
Right. That's the people there, but they pay a lot more property tax than we do. You have to offset that.
Right.
So there are things that I think we can do with corporate income tax. You can do some incentives, but the whole point is that if you're going to do that, it's to incentivize people to come in Louisiana, work in Louisiana, and that can offset, hopefully, with either sales tax generating that revenue or through property tax. You're going to have to come up with some way, or you completely cut a bunch of services.
Right. It wouldn't be the first time somebody talked about getting rid of the homestead exemption, which has almost been a third rail for politicians in Baton Rouge.
It's sacrosanct here in Louisiana. It'd be tough. But it's going to take things like that to be able to offset and remove personal income tax. And I think that's what going to be up to the people to determine. Is it beneficial in terms of you offset? You may lose that homestead exemption, but you also gain in terms of the property tax. But that in and of itself won't offset that.
Right.
We also have to keep in mind that in regard to the budget, we're going to have a surplus next year, like we've been having the past couple of years. But this the following year when the court, COVID federal dollars, but also we'd had some sound practices in terms of fiscal practices and what we implemented in the state as well.
Yeah, I didn't mean
So
I didn't mean to.
you're trying to throw us under the bus.
Sorry. Yeah, you guys
Give a guy a break. We did do a few things.
No,
Everybody might not like what we all did, but we did do a few things.
You got
in
a new
terms-
commissioner.
Yeah, and we do have a new commissioner, Mr. Taylor Barra, who was actually our first speaker. He's a good guy. He's a banker from New Iberia, and he is going to be the commissioner. He will be the Jay Darden is currently it. He will be Jay Darden, and assisting him will be Patrick Goldsmith, who's a great guy. He actually headed up the fiscal division, was on staff in the House close to 30 years. He's been there a while. I mean, he knows the budget inside. There's nobody in that building who knows the budget better than Patrick. So he will serve as his deputy commissioner. And I think that's a great team that Governor-elect Landry put together in terms of providing him advice and serving as the administration's point person on the budget.
Yeah. So overall, I guess the proof will be in the pudding. But you think Landry's going to be good? He'll know what he's doing when he's walking in because he has guys like this that have experience in those kind of things. Right?
Yes, he has. In regard to the fiscal folks that he hasn't really announced other folks that are going to be secretary positions and others in other departments that he's going to have to appoint, or he may end up keeping some.
Yeah.
Who knows? But he started off on a good foot with hiring Taylor and getting Patrick in there. And that's where the budget, it begins with that. And then the governor, he's going to have to provide, typically what they do, they provide the executive budget first part of February, and then that's when the House gets it and then works on it to be able to develop House Bill 1 and all the essential budget is generated. The fiscal measures come from the House and then go over to the Senate.
And, look, there's, you get a guy that goes in on one election, he gets in on the primary. You got him for at least 4 more years. There's probably never a more powerful time for a governor to have almost a mandate when he comes in office like this.
Yeah, a mandate, and there will be, he'll be in a good financial position too.
Right,
because
right,
again, there'll
right.
be a surplus. Again, I think back when we first started, we were dealing with a $2 billion deficit, and it was a problem. So it'll be a great opportunity, as we indicated, but both the majority in the House and the Senate and the administration, and money to hopefully address infrastructure issues, but also look at how we can implement some of those fiscally reform measures that I think that are important, that are going to be important both for taxes, tax structure, but also personal income and other things to help incentivize business and be able to get continue the economy, make it strong, and continue to build on it.
A federal election coming up, a presidential election year. It seems like they only run in 5 or 6 states now because it's already done in the other 44.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's when they, those major cities and states are going to play a big part in that. But hopefully,
Might all come down to a few housewives in the suburbs, right?
well, you never know.
All right, Jerome, thanks so much, man.
Thanks for having me, Harry.
All right, man. We'll be right back with more Bayou Time after this.